Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Zawicki. I am the programs manager. Excuse me, just taking a, a sip out of my massive bottle of water. As we get started, so I'm not parched, I can speak clearly, I can articulate, not dry out my mouth, and we can begin. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. This is course 3. I can't believe it. So we are literally almost a third through the nuanced material of STEPP. So this is not our sick. So we have, just to kind of break it down for you, for those who are just joining us for the first time, and those who have come back to STEPP to enjoy the substantive material of the course. We have our 10 courses, which are every Tuesday evening from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And we are discussing nuanced topics in landlord-tenant law. So we're touching on, various, different subject matter related to landlord-tenant law. We also have 5 sporadically scheduled classes, and those are videos. So those are videos. And it's just basically landlord-tenant, like eviction process, like what to experience or what you're going to experience if you find yourself in an eviction. And that is a very specific video, and we have specific dates that those are occurring on. I believe the next one we are having is either October 1st or October 2nd. So I'll make sure that we send out some information with regard to that as we get closer to the date. But it's definitely going to be next week, and we already have our STEPP class. So actually, I believe it is going to be the 2nd, and I can get you guys the actual specific time with regard to that. But so tonight, again, welcome to STEPP. This is not a dance class. STEPP class is here at Family Promise of Sussex County. We are a nonprofit charitable organization. We're a 501c3 nonprofit devoted to housing crises and helping people who are dealing with eviction or who are street level homeless, who need rehousing programs. So we have a whole range of programs that are really helpful for people in the Tri-County area, in Morris County as well. So STEPP is just another addition to those wonderful programs that we already have here at Family Promise of Sussex County. So STEPP is STEPP. So double P at the end there. So it's an acronym. It stands for Stabilizing Tenancy Eviction Prevention Program. So what STEPP is that it is a, again, like I said, 10 course structure. There's 10 modules, each dealing with various topics regarding landlord-tenant law. So you are joining us for course 3. Today is renting your new home and understanding your lease. So the idea behind STEPP, this is part of a grant program that was awarded to us by the New Jersey State Bar Foundation. We are so grateful for that grant opportunity, and we thank everybody there who awarded us the funding to go ahead and produce and put on this material for you this evening. So thank you to the New Jersey State Bar Foundation. And so we got some money to be able to have these classes, and we feel that these classes will be informative. Again, Family Promise of Sussex County is a housing agency. So we deal specifically with housing issues. So whether that's diverting eviction, whether it is rehousing someone who is afflicted with the crisis of street homelessness, that is what we are here to do. And so this is just another program, the icing on the cake that we're doing. So this is informational, whereas some of our are preventative or reactive, or they are there to help the clients directly with funding and other services. This is an informational service that we are provided, and it is based in landlord-tenant law. So we actually even have guest speakers slated to speak with us. So next week, we are actually doing, so October 1st, Tuesday evening, October 1st, we're going to be doing rent increases. So that is actually going to be our guest speaker. For that one, we had a great guest speaker last week was Chris Witten, who was one of the court officers from Morris County Superior Court. So that was a lovely, lovely episode, and we appreciated Chris's insights and all the wonderful information he provided us. Next week is going to be rent increases, and that's going to be Sarah Webb. She is an attorney from Community Health Law Project, and she's going to provide her insights, acumen, experience, and anecdotes with regard to that particular subject matter. But today, alas, I'm alone. It's just me today, so I do apologize for that, but we'll get through it, I promise. So we're going to go ahead and jump in. So again, I just wanted to give you a quick overview, introduction as to what STEPP is, Stabilizing Tenancy Eviction Prevention Program. So STEPP is an acronym, just like we have a million acronyms in the social services realm. STEPP, Stabilizing Tenancy Eviction Prevention Program. And we're talking about landlord-tenant law today. We are talking specifically about renting your new home and understanding your lease. So as we move forward with the STEPP material, just want to let you guys know, a quick disclaimer, we are not attorneys here. We are not legal service providers. We defer to their opinion and their professional, advice. So if you have any questions with regard to this, so this is intended to be a live stream. I don't know if we'll have time for Q&A at the end. If you want to write in questions, and I'd be happy to try to respond to you when we get to the end of the presentation. You can definitely provide your questions, but I will say up front that we cannot, or I cannot, not being a barred or licensed attorney, I cannot give you legal advice. So I can't give you a response to a specific nuanced situation that deals kind of with, anything that would constitute a response of legal consequence. So that we refer to those professionals, and we always refer clients to Legal Services of Northwest Jersey. They are an exceptional service. They have really experted, wonderful attorneys there, compassionate, experienced, seasoned veteran attorneys who've been doing this for years and can give you excellent advice on that. But I do warn people, if you are seeking counsel, and that has been the through line in some of our discussions, is early intervention is key. Early intervention is key in talking with your landlord. Early intervention in getting legal representation. All of that is really important so that you're not running up to a legal services attorney, the day of your trial in the hallway and saying, I owe, X, can you help me out? And oftentimes if you're getting to them that late, they're not going to be able to assist you, or at best, they'll be able to provide you some, advice or a consultation, but to be able to give you comprehensive wraparound representation and observe and, help you express your legal rights throughout the trial process, that might not be done. And there's no constitutional guarantee to legal representation as it is in a criminal trial. You are constitutionally guaranteed the right to counsel in a criminal trial. In a civil trial, which is what an eviction is, it's part of the civil division. It's what's called special civil part because its disposition, it's a quick matter, they're usually disposed of within 3 to 4 months. So it doesn't have the lengthy discovery process that your typical civil case has. So they're disposed of quickly. And so that's why they are in special civil part along with district court and small claims. Because they are matters that are, relatively short. And I don't know if the dollar amount has anything to do with that, but if anybody has a question regarding that, I will certainly get the answer for you. So, but I don't want to go too tangential into all of that. Just want to kind of give you an idea of what we're doing here. And again, we are not attorneys, right? So that is very important to know and a distinction. I do have a Juris Doctorate. I have my law degree from the Charlotte School of Law, graduated in 2014. But I'm not a licensed attorney. So again, I cannot give you legal counsel, but I can certainly give you an informational session as to what you can experience and all the nuanced topics that go into landlord-tenant law. There's lots to get into, and you'll see as we go through the subject matter tonight that it is a non-exhaustive list of different types of areas of the law that I personally geek out over. I think is really fascinating. I absolutely love it. But hopefully you'll enjoy it as much. Or if you find yourself in that situation where you are experiencing that, that you might, find it informative and you might find it particularly useful. So that's just, one of the reasons why we're communicating this now, but it's for everybody. So another reason why we do STEP is it's not just for people who are currently dealing with landlord-tenant matters. This is for everybody. So this is for landlords, it's for tenants, it's for area practitioners, it's for, social service providers. It's for anybody who wants to be part of solving this problem, because homelessness is on a rise in Sussex County. Landlord-tenant matters are crowding the docket. There's definitely a problem out there. Just in the last year, I think from 22 to 23, Sussex County alone saw a 137% spike in homelessness. And, if we unpack the antecedents that led up to that particular incident, that literal street homelessness, it probably originated with an eviction. So that's something that we're going to, talk about. And that's why we find it so incredibly important to cover the subject matter that we're going to review with you tonight. So just wanted to get that disclaimer out of the way, get some of the housekeeping out of the way, give you kind of an overview of what we do. And that leads us into the timeline. So I've already covered this. We have these classes every Tuesday evening, with the exception of the week of Columbus Day. So you'll see there's a 2-week gap between October 8th and October 22nd. But other than that, so from September 10th to November 19th, every Tuesday evening, again, with the exception of the week of Columbus Day, we are having a class, and it's 5:30 p.m. slated, our scheduled till 7 p.m. It doesn't necessarily have to go that long, although I am, you could ask anybody that I work with, I am long-winded. So we might go that long, but I hope you enjoy being with me and reviewing the subject matter just as much as I enjoy, talking about it with you guys. So we covered housing discrimination already on the 10th, the 17th. Again, great. Thank you. We are so grateful that Christopher Witten joined us, and we discussed familiarizing yourself with the law on September 17th. Today being the 24th, I've got you guys here for renting your new home and understanding your lease. And next week is going to be our guest speaker, Sarah Webb from Community Health Law Project, and we are going to discuss rent increases. And you can see there is a nice list of other subjects that we're going to cover all the way up through the 19th. So, and don't forget, we also have eviction only, so experienced by tenants. Just a reminder, we do have a video that is going to be available on certain dates. I'll make sure that that's on our social media. Those dates and times are available for you. And that is just going to be specifically the eviction process. So from receiving a summons, so basically from the grounds for eviction to receiving a summons to, pretrial notices to, adjournments to trial to, relief after a judgment of possession or warrant of removal is served upon you, and things like that. So those are, the great topics that we'll cover. And that is going to be a cyclical video that is going to come out sporadically. So we have the dates, the 10th through the 19th, but peppered in there is going to be some videos that are going to come from us that deal specifically with the eviction process, the landlord trial procedure, if you will, the landlord-tenant trial procedure. So that is going to be a video. We'll have a Q&A session after viewing the video, and that will be available as well. So a lot of really excellent information that's coming your way via STEPP. So let's go ahead and dig into today's topic. So I am your host. My name is Frank Zawicki. I am the programs manager here at Family Promise of Sussex County. So a little bit about me. I am a Sussex County resident, born and raised. I left for a period of time after graduating law school. I wanted to spend some time with family out in Michigan. I got involved in social services out there after earning my law degree, and I got bit by the social services bug and absolutely loved it. Still love it. And my wife and I had a beautiful baby girl while we were out in Michigan, and we decided there's more family out here. And as cliche as it sounds, it certainly does take a village. So we decided to come on back and be closer to more family. And it's been lovely ever since. We absolutely adore our county. We love Sussex County. We love New Jersey. And I wanted to get involved again, with my community. And I happened upon Family Promise of Sussex County, and their mission really spoke to me because everyone deserves a home. And here at Family Promise, I got involved in a program that is called CEDD, or Comprehensive Eviction Defense and Diversion. And that's just a fancy title for, we've got some grant money from New Jersey's Department of Community Affairs, the DCA, and they gave us a very generous grant that allowed us to go to court, which is really great. So with my JD background educationally, and the new professional experience I had in social services, I was able to combine the two. So representing Family Promise, me and colleagues would go to the courtroom, and in what's called Vicinage 10, so we would meet with lawyers and court staff and landlords and tenants, and we would try to find alternative resolutions to the conflict, whether if it was paying the rental arrears, so be it. If there was mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, that's the underlying cause for any rental arrears or for the eviction. We would try to plug people into services in the county. So the whole idea was going to Vicinage 10 court, so that is Sussex County and Morris County, and basically bridging the gap between the courtroom and the area social services. So we would, again, combine forces with legal services and private attorneys and the landlords and the tenants and the court staff. And we would try to see what the problem was, what we could do to fix it, and plug people into the area services. And it's a very excellent program, and it's still running today at Family Promise of Sussex County and other, 501c3 nonprofit charitable organizations throughout the state. It's really wonderful. So that kind of lent, my experience kind of lent itself to this format. So when me and another staffer, a colleague, we were, thinking about grants and, writing proposals for those grants, we said this was a great opportunity with, again, thank you so much to the New Jersey State Bar Foundation, because we decided, hey, given my experience with CEDD, my knowledge of landlord-tenant law that I gained while operating that grant would be really applicable here. And again, another wonderful service that this agency would like to provide to not only clients or prospective clients, but like we said, anybody who wants to be part of the solution, that we want to make sure that you have this information so that we have landlords and tenants who are less litigious, meaning less apt to, go to court. If you are armed with knowledge of the law, your rights, both landlords and tenants, you can have more peaceable transactions. It could be more civil. You don't necessarily have to go to court every single time. Or as a tenant, if you're aware that your rights are being infringed upon, you can speak up for yourself, and educate your landlord. And likewise, as a landlord, you can protect the rights of your tenants more if you know more. So we're looking for more peaceable transactions, a better, stronger community. And that's always the goal. And as long as we are striving, with those preventative measures in mind, so we can have better landlord transactions for all of our friends and neighbors, I think that's a wonderful thing. So again, thank you for joining me. That's a little tidbit about what we do here at Family Promise of Sussex County, a little bit about my background, and of course, what the purpose of STEPP is. And now let's go ahead and dig into today's material. So I just want to talk about affordable housing, finding affordable housing. So again, we are talking about renting your new home and understanding your lease. So for many of our clients, affordable housing is the main issue. How do they find affordable housing? How do they connect to affordable housing? So that is something that we're going to talk about right now. So if you take a look at the slide that we got up on the screen right now, some really wonderful resources. So we'll start right from the top. The New Jersey Housing Resource Center is created by the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency. It includes listings of affordable and accessible units as well as other rentals. The listings indicate whether there is a wait list. So you can search online or contact their call center. The number's listed right there, and the state and state the counties or towns you're interested in searching, whether you need any accessibility features and other search criteria, and you may receive a list of places to contact. So that's a really great service where they can provide you listings, based on your needs. So that's a really great number that you can call. So please write down that number, give them a call, let them know like the towns, the counties that you are looking for, and hopefully they can help you with your affordable housing search in that particular area. Affordable Homes New Jersey, our next resource by Community Grants Planning and Housing, or what is called CGP&H. So CGP&H is a private firm that is the administrative agent that certifies applicants and manages the waiting list for Mount Laurel housing for several municipalities. So you click pre-application under Apply Now. After you submit your preliminary application, you will receive a link to your own Affordable Homes New Jersey profile. So you please visit your profile immediately to join rental and ownership waiting lists, and you can visit your profile anytime in the future to join waiting lists and view listings. So we have Piazza Associates Inc. is a private firm that is the administrative agent that certifies applicants and manages the wait list for Mount Laurel housing for several municipalities. You can search under Discover for properties by county under the property directory and for quick rentals. Fair Share Housing Center, a nonprofit advocacy organization that promotes fair housing and in particular ensures that New Jersey municipalities meet their affordable housing obligations. So you can subscribe to their newsletter. Scroll down to the bottom of the page, which may include housing opportunities. So again, some really lovely resources. So if you have the opportunity while we're reviewing the information that's featured on this particular slide, please write everything down. Because these can be really great resources. And if the resource isn't necessarily applicable to you at this time, if you research it, you look into it a little bit further, you might find that it could be your start in a roadmap to other applicable resources. Just want to make sure my mic's on. I move around a lot as I talk, so I might bump into things and things like that, so my mic might cut out. So I might frequently look down at myself. So I assure you, I'm just making sure that my mic is still good. Tori, our tech whiz, is letting me know that we are good to go. So I got the thumbs up. So feeling good. Okay, Affordable Housing Online, a private site that gathers information about open Section 8 and federally subsidized housing open waiting lists. Affordable housing that is specific to New Jersey, such as Mount Laurel housing, a lot of Mount Laurel references. But again, like I said, that is not the only municipality that they use. This is simply just examples that are listed on their website. So use it as your roadmap. So New Jersey Housing Resource Center, Affordable Homes New Jersey, Piazza and Associates Inc., Fair Share Housing Center, and now Affordable Housing Online. It might not, so you can sign up for their newsletter as well at affordablehousingonline.com/sign up to get waiting list openings notifications sent directly to your email. Okay. So as it continues, that affordable housing list, really great resources that we refer to all the time here at Family Promise of Sussex County. So now we're getting into some really, main, the meat of some of these, entities, we'll just say entities, right? Drew a blank there for a second, but hey, we're live, right? So that's going to happen. So we'll edit it out in post-production. But so New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, the DCA, we know them, the DCA, we work with them all the time. They're excellent. We love the DCA. The DCA is one of the reasons why we have, all the programs that we have here. They are a government agency, a state agency here that addresses housing and community needs throughout the state of New Jersey. Wonderful people that work there, compassionate people, and we are so grateful for them at our agency because, again, we wouldn't be able to reach all of the wonderful people in our Tri-County area, Morris County as well, without their help. So they have allowed our budget to balloon significantly, hire more staff, and reach more people, and it's a really powerful partnership. So the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, the DCA administers Section 8 vouchers. So if we're talking about affordable housing, so Section 8 vouchers come from HUD, the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, but they do filter through DCA regional offices, and that's how they are maintained. So the DCA administers Section 8 vouchers, SRAP, vouchers, and sometimes short-term rental assistance programs. So check DCA's news and announcements and follow DCA on social media to be alerted about open waiting lists and new programs. Okay. So HUD as well. So you can use this website. You can use HUD's website to search for public housing, federally subsidized housing, and HUD regional offices. This website will provide you with addresses and contact information. So definitely two key agencies that you want to keep in mind when you are considering your affordable housing list. Or if you are in trouble and you find yourself not being able to get services at the county level, go right to the government source, go to the DCA, go to HUD, reach out to these agencies and they will help you. Okay. So public housing authorities, another excellent resource. So so public housing authorities. So that link is a list of public housing authorities in New Jersey that have websites. So if you follow them on social media, you may receive alerts about any opening wait lists. So that is crucial too. So I didn't even think about that. Dawn, thank you so much for putting that into this slide. That is excellent. So as you can see, this is a collaborative effort. We have tech, we have, your presenter, we also have, Dawn Hendershot. So she is wonderful. She found some excellent resources here. And I didn't even think that public housing authorities, so local public housing authorities. So for instance, like Urban League of Morris County, they are great authorities and agencies, entities that can help plug you into legal services. They can help find area funding streams that if you're in a predicament where you are being evicted, or if you find yourself at the level of street homelessness and you need to be connected to services for shelter, hotel, motel placements, any kind of things like that, or if you need a funding stream for your rehousing efforts, they are excellent, excellent resources. So connecting to their social media, as well as social media for nonprofit agencies like Family Promise of Sussex County, is a great way to get in the know of what available services there are out there for you. So that is a really key one. So please write that down as well and take a look into that so you can see if that's something that might be advantageous to you. So, and then we also have the New Jersey Guide to Affordable Housing, which is published by the DCA. So the guide lists income restricted affordable housing units for rent and for sale in New Jersey. So that is wonderful. You also have individual municipal websites. So since each municipality has an affordable housing obligation, some may list affordable housing rentals on their municipal websites. So that's a key element to understand too, is that each municipality, township has ordinances or they have bylaws whereby they have to adhere to a certain amount of affordable housing within their borders. So they probably have the most up-to-date information as to what affordable housing is available for you. So if you reach out to them, you go to their websites. Again, this is all about utilizing the resources that you have available to you. So we're going to get into the substantive renting your new home, understanding your lease, the law portion, the letter of the law portion of this presentation. But before we got into that, I just wanted to share with these slides just some of the excellent resources that are out there. So if you are currently looking for an affordable house or affordable home in this area or throughout the state of New Jersey, please take advantage of these resources. And we'll see to make sure that this slide or the information on these slides are available to you so that you can use the hyperlinks on them. And just please, if there's any phone numbers in there, please write them down and take advantage of them because, gosh, we know how expensive it is in the state of New Jersey, between, groceries, wage stagnation and all the other peripheral costs that come with living, just simply living, home ownership, and rentals. It can be a daunting task. So please take advantage of these services to see if there's anything out there that you can take advantage of and enjoy, and so that you can expedite your affordable housing search and have all of the available tools to you in your toolkit. Okay, so VA homeless programs includes information about the National Call Center for Homeless Veterans. There's the number right there, and about HUD's VA Supportive Housing Program, which is HUD VASH. Okay, and we actually work with folks here, clients who have utilized that VASH voucher, and it has been very comprehensive, and it's been a wonderful experience in getting them housed. So I have nothing but wonderful things to say about VA and their support and their compassion and the excellent work that they do. And of course, HUD and their veteran-focused voucher. Okay, and senior citizens. Your county office on aging may have housing resources as well. So see the New Jersey Division of Aging, the county offices on aging page for a directory of those county offices. Okay. So tips for applying. So let's review some tips about how to apply for affordable housing. So again, thank you to Dawn. She got some excellent tidbits for you that she bulleted here on our PowerPoint presentation for you. because, you don't want to just stare at my face the whole time. So you've got something, enjoyable to look at. And it's really helpful, really excellent information. So to begin, we've got to apply to several places. Sometimes an open waiting list means that you must submit a pre-application to be entered into a lottery. So to hopefully be selected to get on a waiting list. So waiting lists could be months or years long. So again, going back to affordable housing. So if it's senior housing, if it's subsidized housing, there are places even right here in Newton where we're headquartered, Family Promise of Sussex County. We've got Brookside Terrace. The wait list can go on for years there. So get in early and apply everywhere. Cast a wide net so that you can have the greatest opportunity for taking advantage of the affordable housing resources that are out there, okay? If a third party posts information about available affordable housing or an open waiting list, check the source. Go to the homepage of the complex or agency taking the applications or contact them and make sure that you have all of the correct information. Keep documents that you may need. If you get on a waiting list, you will be asked to complete a full application. And then later, you may be asked to update your information. Keep proof of current income, like recent pay stubs, a Social Security award letter, printout of child support payments, etc. Also keep other important documents for all household members, like a current government-issued picture identification cards, Social Security cards, and birth certificates. Update your contact information. Super, super important. For those, of us who drop their phones or constantly change their numbers, things like that, you move around, you move to a new area code, things like that. You want to update your phone number, update your contact information. So if a housing or rental assistance provider cannot reach you, you may be taking off the waiting list. And what a shame if you've been waiting for years and you're next on the list. Oh my God. And just because you didn't have your updated contact information, what a silly way to lose out on that opportunity. So again, please make sure that you have updated contact information. And it is important, especially in this situation, because years, like we said, may go by until you actually are able to go on into these places and you're on the waiting list for years. Your phone number may reasonably change within that time. So please make sure, remember, write down all this information, keep documents, keep files, keep folders, keep everything on hand, keep organized, okay? And if you can't, for instance, if you are afflicted by the crisis of street homelessness, that is when you can turn to your case manager and say, I need help organizing this information. That is something that we can provide to you here at Family Promise of Sussex County. So if you're out there looking for affordable housing, you're waiting, you're on a voucher waiting list, you're on an affordable housing or subsidy waiting list, but you don't have anywhere to have your mail sent, we can help you with that. So please come talk to us so we can help you organize those documents so you can stay on top of everything. Okay. So if you need a reasonable accommodation due to a disability to apply or complete the application process, ask for it. Try to keep a record of your request. If there is no response to your request, or if it is denied, seek legal assistance because you may have rights under state or federal civil rights laws, right? Because we've talked about in housing discrimination, you cannot be denied a rental because of a handicap or a disability, okay? New Jersey has laws stating that landlords cannot discriminate based upon a tenant's source of income, which includes rental assistance. So if you are denied a unit because you are on the rental assistance, you should seek legal assistance. Keep copies of your application and anything you submit, as well as any confirmation that documents were submitted on time. Okay, so that's really, really helpful, great basic information, and some really great detailed information as well. But I think that is super helpful, guys. So for those of you who are, embarking on your affordable housing search, please make sure that you adhere to, some of these tidbits here, and that will definitely help you in your affordable housing search. So one of the last things that we touched on, and so we got the moving in checklist. So we will address that shortly. But I want to just take a quick little kind of tangent here. And I promise I'll be quick, people. I can't promise everything, but I'm going to try. So, we're going to move off to the side here. And because one of the last things that we talked about in this slide, the previous slide that we just scoped out, was discrimination, right? And discrimination was the first course that we did. It was our kickoff class. And one of the reasons we did it as our kickoff class is because it is so important to know when you are being discriminated against, to look out for signs, to understand what remedies are available to you. So I just want to make it known upfront to our audience that it is illegal for landlords to refuse to rent to someone on the basis of their Section 8 voucher status, or on the basis of any subsidy received by that individual. So, like I said, we discussed in course 1, housing discrimination, what some of those tactics look like, including what is called steering, which is a practice used by landlords and real estate agents whereby a prospective renter is advised to rent a home in a certain area based on certain characteristics of the renter that are illegal to consider when renting a home to that individual or family. So basically what steering is it's a practice that is, and it's a nuanced practice. This is subtle discrimination, but you have to know it when it's happening. And this is part of the housing search. And when we're talking about subsidies and we're talking about looking for affordable housing, and if you have one of those Section 8 vouchers, which is transferable, or if you have a voucher that is transferable and you can take it from property to property with you, it is so important to know, because sometimes there's that comes with having that voucher, with that subsidy. For some reason, people are looked upon, as lower class, or, that it's a weakness because you need that voucher or anything like that, or that there's some kind of trouble associated with you because you have a subsidy, which is completely wrong, and it's awful and it's illegal. And that's what you need to know. So one thing that I wanted to talk about is what's called steering. So something to look out for, which again, we covered in course 1, housing discrimination, but just to rehash on that, steering is the practice of saying something like, I think you'd be more comfortable in another neighborhood. I don't think this is a good fit for you. So basically telling someone based on a certain characteristic, let's say if it's someone, a person of color, and making them, sending them or funneling to an area that is, predominantly, populated by other people who are people of color. That is wrong. That is wrong. You can go wherever you want, and anybody who denies you, a rent based on your subsidy status, and again, it might not be readily available or observable. It might not be overt. It might be more clandestine, surreptitious, kind of below the surface, right? Something that you're kind of like, I don't know, was I discriminated against, or was I not? I'm not sure. So if in the event that you do feel that you were discriminated against, you want to make sure that you reach out to Legal Services of New Jersey, your county's bar association, the New Jersey Real Estate Commission, any local housing groups like the ones that we talked about before, including Urban League of Morris County for you Morris County residents. The DCA, HUD. So these entities, these agencies can, help process your claim if you feel that you are discriminated against. And remember, we talked about in that housing discrimination course about the Fair Housing Act of 1968. And we talked about your constitutional protections, those immutable characteristics. So those characteristics that are so innately, entwined with your identity, who you are, they're so difficult to change, right? So, race, religion, sex, sexual orientation, things like that. These are part of you. They are innate. They are immutable characteristics. They cannot be changed, right? So you cannot be discriminated against upon those characteristics. So who you are at your core, if you have a disability, and again, in this instance, if you have a subsidy, there are additional protections for that. And we want to make sure that you are aware of that. And I just wanted to touch on that. So as we kind of cover that topic or just rehash that, I just want to say, again, just rehash those tactics of discouragement. One includes steering, or, a landlord may withhold information, or they may delay a housing process, or they may make subtle suggestions that indicate that a particular renter might not be welcome, right? Or be on the lookout for, like I had just, made an example before, for what's called red flag language. So it may sound like, I don't think this is a good fit for you, or maybe you'd be happier in another neighborhood. Okay. So again, it's not always going to be on the nose, but just be aware of it and assert your right. And if you feel that you've been discriminated against, please reach out to those resources, and, make sure that you are, exercising your legal rights, because that is super important. We want to make sure that that information is available to you. Okay. Things like unexpected roadblocks, being told that an apartment or a property is unavailable when in fact it is available. So again, keep a lookout for those kinds of things. Just wanted to touch on that, before we moved into our moving in checklist. So before we do that as well, it is important because it is part of our curriculum to discuss other aspects of groups that need particular guidance or help in finding affordable housing. So one thing that I did find is on our New Jersey website when I was doing some research in preparation for this class, the Division of Aging Services, housing options for senior services or for senior citizens. So I just wanted to take a moment to talk about available services, available affordable housing for seniors who are looking for affordable housing as well, because I think that is something that is really important. So we at Family Promise, we work with people who are subsidy recipients who receive Section 8 vouchers. But likewise, it is so important also our senior citizens who are often on a fixed income. And as it gets more and more expensive to live in this state, the harder and harder and less available affordable housing opportunities are for those particular groups. So that includes, again, like I said, voucher recipients and our senior citizens. So I just found this glossary that includes various types of housing arrangements for senior citizens. So I just want to review a few of them with you. So for those of you who have some senior citizens in your family, or if you yourself are a senior citizen and joining us for this particular discussion, I just want to tell you about a few types of living arrangements that are out there that are affordable for senior citizens. And please write them down, look into them, reach out to your local municipalities, use the resources from the previous slides, and see if you can be connected with these housing types. And when you reach out to these entities, ask specifically for these types of living arrangements, or see if you can do an internet search and use these keywords. And if you need help using the technology, please, you can reach out to Family Promise of Sussex County or any area social service provider, and our case management team will help you do that. Okay. In fact, we have a computer lab here at Family Promise of Sussex County at our Sparta office, and we'd be happy to make arrangements for you to use our technology. Okay. So the thing that I'll start off with is what's called, and I believe it's listed alphabetically, is accessory apartments. So accessory apartments are units which have been added onto or created within a single family house. The eating, bathing, and sleeping areas are separate from those in the main dwelling. Generally, children, close relatives, or friends of the older person occupy one of the structures. So this option is advantageous primarily because of its economic, social, and security benefits. So it allows older persons to live independently, but close to people who care about them. So that's accessory apartments. The next is adult family care, or it's parenthesized as AFC, or that's the acronym. So adult family care, or AFC. So adult family care, or AFC homes, offer individuals who are no longer able to live alone the opportunity to move in and share the home of a caretaker who is capable of providing needed assistance and supervision. AFC provides a home-like environment where participation in the family and community are encouraged. These homes are supervised by a sponsor agency, which has been licensed by the Department of Health. Okay, so we also have adult retirement communities are specifically designed for active, independent older people. Units are generally for purchase, but occasionally rental units are available. These units may be in the form of single houses, duplexes, condominiums, or garden apartments. Excuse me. I actually am getting over a little bit of a cold. Don't worry, Tori. I'm good. We're social distancing. I'm just, and you guys are safe virtually in your safe spaces as well. But if you hear me sniffling, clearing my throat, obnoxiously grabbing for my giant bottle of water, that's just all it is. I'm not just always obnoxious like this. Maybe I am, but let's go ahead and continue with the material. So we also have what are called affordable or subsidized housing. So that's really great too, kind of on the topic of what we were talking about. So affordable or subsidized housing can be rentals or for purchase. all affordable housing units are priced to be affordable to households making 80% or less of the county median income. So remember that number. So 80% or less of the county median income. Those are typically what those units are reserved for. So take a look at your financials and see if you qualify for that. So again, what we're doing is we're just going through a glossary of some different styles of homes that you can do a keyword search for those who are senior citizens themselves or who have family members who are senior citizens and they're embarking on an affordable housing search. This could be a great way to start. And we mentioned some of those resources before, some of those local municipalities, those county resources, those different websites, and of course, Family Promise of Sussex County being one of them, and our website, familypromisesussex.org, which has our housing hub page, our maps and things like that. Really wonderful resources that you can use to connect to affordable housing. But you can always start by inquiring to those resources or to those entities or agencies and say, hey, I'd like to try one of these types. Can you take a look at any of these particular types of homes for me? Okay. So assisted living residences or ALRs are licensed by the Department of Health. These are community-based facilities offering a special mix of housing, personalized support services, and healthcare designed to promote maximum independence and dignity for each resident. Staff is available 24 hours a day. These facilities promote aging in place. These facilities have apartment-style housing, rooms, and congregate dining. Assisted living services are available when needed. There's also boarding homes. So boarding homes differ by type of home for older adults in New Jersey. So there's different classes of that. But I don't want to get too nuanced about that particular topic about the different classes and things like that. But I just did want to, apprise you of that as an option as well. So if you're taking notes, if you are, listening to the different types, I just wanted to make those available to you and let you know that boarding homes is an option and to look a little bit into that a little bit further. So we also have comprehensive personal care homes, or what are called CGP&H, are facilities licensed by the New Jersey Department of Health to provide room and board and to assure that assisted living services are available when needed to 4 or more adults unrelated to the proprietor. Units are double occupancy and have a shared bathroom. Okay. So moving forward, we also have continuing care retirement communities. We have home sharing. We even mobile home parks. Mobile home parks can be age restricted for people who are 55 years of age and older. So that's something to look at. That might be more affordable than your traditional housing opportunity. So you can take a look at even a mobile home park, which is an excellent opportunity. And especially if you're downsizing, you don't need a whole lot of space, but it might be more affordable. And there might be communities that are based for that particular age range. So that might be something that might be really great for someone who's in need of affordable housing at a certain age. There are multi-level facilities. Of course, there are nursing homes as well. There are residential health care facilities. Okay. And then, of course, there are subsidized apartments for the elderly. So subsidized apartments for the elderly are rental units, generally in the form of garden apartments or apartments in high-rise or mid-rise buildings. The units have been specially designed for and are limited to people who are at least 62 years old or have a disability. Construction or rental costs are financed by the local, state, or federal government. Sponsors of this housing includes nonprofit or limited profit organizations or public housing entities. There are income limitations for eligibility for this type of housing, and the rents are usually subsidized with the amount of rent based upon the income of the household. There are usually lengthy waiting lists for this housing, though. So that's just something I wanted to bring to your attention, but just again, let you know. Again, the through line that we are communicating with a lot of the subject material that we talk about here at STEPP is that early intervention. So if you are already housed, but you know that it's not going to last, for a particular length of time, and you need to pursue or embark on your affordable housing search, get in early, right? get in early and adhere to the steps and the tips that we had mentioned in the prior slides. So that is something that I wanted to just bring to your attention, that particular glossary that I think is very helpful. If you need to look it up yourself, you can simply take a search at the Division of Aging Services. It's through New Jersey's Department of Health and Human Services. And you can look at the Division of Aging Services, and those are housing options for senior citizens. So just wanted to briefly touch on that. These are some housing options for senior citizens. So, if you're looking for an affordable housing opportunity, those are just the types. So we talked about some of the entities that could assist you in your affordable housing search. These are the types of affordable housing that could be available to you. So, you want to put those keywords into your search and see if they yield anything and possibly produce you a good, result. So, thank you for, letting me share that with you, and we'll go ahead and move on. So before we jump into our moving checklist, I just want to briefly touch on disabled groups as well. So these are really important groups, right? So subsidy recipients, senior citizens, folks who have a disability or a handicap. These are groups that have, that require special protections because there can be discrimination, whether it's intentional or it's not. I want to make sure, and one of my missions as a lecturer for the STEPP series is to apprise you of your rights. So I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that it is illegal for a landlord to refuse to rent to you because of a handicap or disability. In fact, this characteristic has additional protections under state and federal law. So, for instance, for those renters with a handicap or disability, a landlord must be willing to make reasonable changes to the rules and policies as they apply to that renter so that they can enjoy the property so long as the changes being made are what are considered reasonable. So the landlord cannot refuse to make reasonable changes to your apartment that make it so they cannot refuse to make reasonable changes to your apartment that make it easier for you to enjoy that space. This means that the landlord must let you provide handrails, ramps, or any other special equipment that you may need. However, you may have to pay for it, if you make those changes yourself. So I think to make a note, though, if for those tenants who are in subsidized, so if we do have that crossover, and many of these, are overlapping, groups. So you may have someone who has a disability who has a voucher. You may have a senior citizen who is handicapped. You may have some, so again, we're talking about all these protections for these particular groups who need help. And we went more in depth during our housing discrimination module where we talked about, race and criminal history and other, factors like that as well. And I invite you to check out those videos because I think they're really informative and excellent. But today I just wanted to, before we move forward, it is part of our curriculum, and I wanted to just touch base on for those of you who are embarking on your housing search. So we're going to touch on when you do find your place, what you should do when you move in and to understand your new lease, right? We're going to jump into that just now, but I just wanted to, as we are going forward, as we're moving forward into that material, we're following a timeline, right? So we talked about available resources to you and the different types of housing units that are available. And we just want to talk now about, folks who have a disability or a handicap. So, but again, as a quick note, if you are a subsidy recipient, if you live in public housing or subsidized buildings, they may have their landlord. So the landlord may, or I believe, pay for accommodations in those environments where it is subsidized or public housing for any kind of accommodations for a disability, someone who is renting who may have a disability or a handicap and needs accommodations for that. I believe under those subsidized buildings, the landlord does have to pay for it. But I believe typically if it is a private rental and there isn't a subsidy involved, of course, the landlord must comply with reasonable accommodations, but you may be responsible for paying for those accommodations. You may also have to pay for the reasonable cost of removing any ramps or handrails or other changes when moving out of the premises, if that's what the landlord indeed wants. So the landlord, in fact, may ask you to deposit money in an account each month for the removal, only if the removal is, particularly expensive. However, the payments have to be low enough to be able to be affordable. And then once the the need for the expense or the cost of the removal is removed, meaning, the payments that you have to make in that account, they have to be low, they have to be affordable. But once you have covered the cost of the removal of either the ramp or the handrail, for example, then you no longer have to pay anything into that account. Okay. And it does need to be an interest-bearing account. Okay. So just something that I wanted to touch on with regard to that. So New Jersey permits a tenant with a disability or a handicap to terminate a lease if the apartment is not handicap accessible. So you can break your lease if you ask your landlord to make the apartment handicap accessible and they are unwilling or unable to do so. So I just wanted to briefly touch on that before we move into our next subject matter. So I just wanted to touch on that. So again, just as a brief overview, we touched on the available resources that are out there, and the types of searches that could be done for certain groups of people, making sure that you are aware of your rights and any kind of discriminatory action that is propagated upon you by landlords or real estate brokers. If you are, and we used senior citizens, and we use people with disability or handicap, and subsidy recipients as an example there. But let's go ahead and jump now into moving in, right? Okay, so inspecting the property. So before you move in, make sure that the apartment has received what's called a certificate of occupancy, or what's referred to as a CO, from the town housing inspector. Although I will say not all towns require a CO, so call the town inspector where the apartment is located to determine whether you actually have such a law applicable in your situation. So what a certificate of occupancy is it's a document verifying that a building or a structure is ready for occupancy and complies with the Uniform Construction Code. Uniform Construction Code. So COs are applicable to new buildings and structures, unconstructed buildings, and additions and changes of use. COs can protect a tenant from issues like overcrowding, a lack of smoke alarms, and insufficient heat. Landlords are responsible for a CO each time a tenant changes. So anytime a new tenant comes in and occupies that space, they are responsible for a CO every single time, a certificate of occupancy. So again, it is a document that is verifying that a building or structure is ready for occupancy and is in compliance with the Uniform Construction Code. Uniform Construction Code. So again, really important, and it protects you as a tenant against, deficiencies or any kind of things like with the property, like overcrowding, a lack of smoke alarms, and insufficient heat. So it's a checklist that, a town inspector, they go through, they review the apartment, they make sure it is actually ready and deemed it, habitable and ready for occupancy. So you have a certificate from the landlord that says this place is habitable, it's been inspected, and it covers everything, and it complies with the Uniform Construction Code. So that is an important phrase, Uniform Construction Code. So we want to make sure that when you receive that CO, that certificate of occupancy, that document saying that you can move in because a town inspector has come through and has looked at the place and deemed it habitable, in line and in compliance with the Uniform Construction Code. Okay, so moving forward, the CO includes such information as the address, type of occupancy, the number of rooms, any necessary permits and restrictions on permissible activities. Occupancy without a CO is in violation of the Uniform Construction Code and can result in fines up to $2,000. Okay, so important information to know. All right, so now we're finally at the slide that's been up for, I don't know, forever now. So, but now we are finally moving on to moving in checklist. So now we are at the point where you've found your place, you've overcome any hurdles. Maybe you've been on a wait list, but you finally found your place. And even if you haven't been on a wait list, let's say this is just, a regular, run of the mill rental. But and you're there, and hopefully you've been given your CO, right? So like I said, before you move in, make sure that the apartment has received a certificate of occupancy from the town housing inspector. Okay. So you've received that, but don't take that at face value. Don't just receive the CO and just say, okay, I'm good now. But you want to make sure that you really dig in, be proactive in this endeavor. This is your home. This is where you're going to live. You have the right to possess this space. This is your space. So make sure that you do your move-in checklist. So we have a nice list here that touches on some of the things that you have to review when you are moving in. So for one, the bathroom, that's a great place to start. Check the water pressure and hot water and look for leaks. Make sure that the toilet works. Check for loose tiles on the walls and floor and look for bugs or signs of bugs, right? So again, bathroom, very important spot. So going right into the kitchen, some of the most important places in your home, right? The bathroom, where you need to bathe. I mean, these are human essentials, daily functions that we all are entitled to enjoy. So you want to make sure you have a safe, habitable place to do those things, to cook, enjoy your living space, and make sure that is free of any kind of issues. Okay. So the kitchen next, check the water pressure. Again, always check the water pressure. Leaks, hot and cold water, stove and refrigerator, if any. Look for roaches and other bugs. That's really important too. If you see any signs of things like that, we'll talk about the remedies that are available to you if you find any of these issues. Bedrooms and sleeping rooms, check the walls, floors, and furnishings. If the apartment or home is being rented with furniture already in it, for bed bugs or evidence of bed bugs. Okay. Ceiling and walls. Check the ceiling and walls for water leaks, stains, dampness, mold, loose plaster, holes, or cracks. Check the windows. Check the locks, screens, glass, and frames, floors. Look for rotten wood, loose tiles, splinter, water stains, and cigarette burns. Electricity. Make sure that the light switches and fixtures work. Take a lamp and try out all of the outlets. That's actually a really good one. I like that. Plug it in and make sure that all the outlets work. I think all of us have had that experience where you go around and you plug something in. You're like, I'm not getting any juice, right? So do that ahead of time, right? And look for hanging openings, look for any hanging or open wires. It is sometimes not possible to check the working condition of electrical switches and outlets because the power may have been shut off in the apartment. So sometimes it's not always an available search, but if you can check it, please make sure that you do. The heat. Make sure that you turn on the heating system and make sure that it works properly, even if you rent in the summer. Yeah, definitely check that heat out. Make sure that it's you're not going to have an issue, because you have to call your landlord when you're in dire straits and the house is freezing. You don't want to have to wait to that point, that moment in time. And again, early intervention being the key. So early intervention. Check out these things right when you move in. Get that certificate of occupancy, but don't take it at face value. Do the check yourself. Do a thorough check, and don't hold anything back. If you feel that something is amiss, something is wrong, assert your rights as a renter and make sure you let your landlord know that there are deficiencies with the property, okay? Including the basement. Look for rat holes, dirt, trash, leaks, loose wires, broken windows, crumbling walls, mold, roaches, and termites. Smoke detectors, check for installation and make sure they work properly. Doors, check for deadbolt locks and peepholes on the entrance door. Finally, paint. Look in all rooms and make sure paint is fresh. Check for dangerous chipping, lead paint, okay? So just wanted to make sure that we covered that. So that was a slide right there that touches on some of the things that you should go ahead and check out. Now, not all the things that I mentioned are listed on that slide, but I did run through that list of items that you should be checking out. And another really great resource I want to bring to everybody's attention, and I think I mention every time that we have a STEPP class together, I wanted to tell you guys about the Legal Services of New Jersey Landlord-Tenant Manual. Please use that. That is going to be an excellent roadmap for you guys to assert your legal rights. And that's going to have a lot of helpful tips and information. And in fact, it's probably the central resource that we use to prepare for this class. And the wonderful thing is that we're going to have some really excellent guest speakers coming from legal services, namely the Morris County office is going to come join us for some of our classes, including Randy Yang, Jonathan Tolentino, and David Saltzman. And thank you very much. We greatly appreciate that you guys are going to be here and join us for those classes as our guest speaker. So let's go ahead and move forward with our presentation. So now that you have moved in, we did our checklist. Now we're talking about if issues are found. All right. So let's just see if I have my notes together properly. Okay. So we are all set. So have the landlord sign your checklist, noting any issues, and take pictures. Like we said, that is something that you need to do. Ask the landlord to make necessary repairs and correct any bug, mold, or rodent problems immediately. Have them put an agreement in writing, and that is really important. So any promise made by a landlord not in writing without dates and times and the landlord's signatures is going to be very difficult to enforce, right? So we want to make sure that you get things written down. So use of repairs not. Okay, so moving forward, if they refuse, send a letter via certified mail detailing the defective condition and explain that you expect the landlord to make those repairs. So, and keep a copy of the letter sent through certified mail with a return receipt for later on. So again, take those pictures of the defective conditions if necessary and hold on to them. You will need them in case the landlord tries to wrongfully evict you or keep your security deposit. So that is really important information. So that is really great tips for those of you who do identify issues. When you move into your place and you find some deficiencies with the property, again, make your checklist. And we talked about some of the things that you want to address, from the bathroom to the kitchen to the bedroom, the ceilings, the walls, the wallpaper, electricity, heat, basement, smoke detectors, doors, paint, all of that stuff. Check it all out. Be thorough. And do it. Don't be worried about being annoying. It's not. This is your home. This is where you're going to live. This is where you're going to have your children, your family. For those of you who have families, that doesn't even matter. It's your home no matter what. So you want to make sure that you are, adhering, to that checklist, and you are exercising your rights, and make sure that you take care of that. So make sure that your landlord signs the checklist. Take pictures. Document everything. That is super important, because we said just having a verbal agreement, right? It's hard to enforce when someone said, yeah, you just talked about it. But if you have dates and times, you have their signature, and you can have that available as evidence if they don't talk about it. Now, habitability is something that we're going to talk about more in depth at another point in time. We're going to talk about habitability. That in and of itself is going to be its own class. So we'll talk about that at a later date, but this does contribute to that if you find all of these issues. So if there's some material defect with the property that affects your ability to, enjoy it and live in it, then you want to make sure that the landlord addresses that. And that we're talking about specifically upfront. So we'll talk about habitability claims down the road. But again, ask the landlord to make any necessary repairs and correct any bug, mold, or rodent problems right away. And then have that agreement in writing. So make a checklist, have the landlord sign it, take lots of pictures, get everything in writing. And of course, if they refuse, send a letter via certified mail with a return receipt. And keep all of that documentation. Keep everything available to you, because you never know if things go down. If they refuse to make repairs, you may have to pursue the matter litigiously. And we'll talk about that going forward, and what that entails and how to assert your rights in that regard. But it's important to document everything and have everything available to you at your disposal. Okay, so let's go ahead and keep on rolling. So now we are on to security deposits. All right. So let's go ahead and discuss what a security deposit is. So we are now on the security deposit slide. So a security deposit is any money paid to the landlord in case the tenant moves out and owes money. It may be called something else, but it is still a security deposit. So last month's rent paid in advance is security deposit money because it protects the landlord in case the tenant moves without paying the last month of rent. Okay, so but a landlord cannot treat a security deposit as his or her personal property. They also cannot put it in a bank account with their own money, so they cannot commingle funds like any rent money that they receive. Knowingly using money that is supposed to be held in trust could be a disorderly person's offense. So that just basically means that I think disorderly persons is a type of is a criminal offense category statutorily that I think is below misdemeanor. So it is a criminal offense, but I think it is, in terms of the criminal statute, in terms of its like, egregiousness, it is, comparatively low, but it is an offense, and it is illegal. So just know that, that one. So what the purpose of the security deposit is, but just know again that a landlord cannot commingle your funds. They have to put it in what is called an interest-bearing account, and we'll talk more about those details going forward. So just kind of going over what about security deposit. So again, let's just review the slides. A security deposit is any money paid to the landlord in case the tenant moves out and owes money. It can be called something else. Last month's rent paid in advance or pet deposit are examples. The total security deposit can never be more than 1.5 times the full monthly rent. So landlords may increase the deposit amount annually, but the additional amount cannot be more than 10% of the prior deposit. Landlords must deposit the money into a New Jersey bank in an account that pays interest and provide notice to the tenant 30 days after money is received. On the anniversary of the lease, the landlord must pay the accrued interest or apply the amount to the tenant's rent. Tenant must be notified if the funds are transferred or if property ownership was sold, as the new owner is responsible to tenant for the security deposit. Okay, so let's just kind of run down security deposit a bit more in depth, and we are cooking, so we are moving along. So just real quick, let's talk about what is called the Rent Security Deposit Act. That regulates how landlords handle security deposits, how it's stored, how it's returned, and any deductions made. So does it apply to all landlords? Okay, the act, or what is called the Rent Security Deposit Act, the act does not apply to seasonal use or rental units. Seasonal use or rental units means that the rental is for 125 days or less by a person who has a permanent home someplace else. Okay, so the landlord has to prove that the use of the rental of the property is seasonal. So the act does not automatically apply to owner-occupied properties with 1 or 2 residential units. So let's go ahead and move forward with that. So how much can a landlord charge for a security deposit under the Rent Security Deposit Act? So we have it actually listed on this slide here. So as we go through the material, again, so the act doesn't apply to what are called seasonal use or seasonal or rent use or rental units. So if the rental is for 125 days or less by a person, so if it's for 125 days or less, it is not applicable, and it doesn't automatically apply to owner-occupied properties with 1 or 2 residential units, including your own. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth, but just to kind of quickly recap on what we're doing here. So again, how much can a landlord charge for security under the Rent Security Deposit Act? So the total security deposit can never be more than 1.5 times the full monthly rent. So remember, a security deposit can include things like last month's rent paid up front or a pet deposit. The landlord may request additional security deposit money annually. However, additional amount cannot be more than 10% of the prior deposit, and the total security can never be more than 1.5 times the monthly rent. Okay, so that's really important to remember. So what kinds of notices must the landlord provide to the tenant? So the Rent Security Deposit Act requires the landlord to deposit a tenant's security in a New Jersey bank in an account that pays interest, as noted on the slides there. So any notice after, so what about notice after you pay the security deposit? So tenants living in a non-owner occupied unit. So basically the owner doesn't live there. Okay. So The landlord has 30 days from receipt of the deposit to provide written notice with the following information. So remember that. The landlord has 30 days from receipt of the deposit. So once they receive that deposit, they have 30 days where they must provide you as a tenant with written notice with the following information: the name and address of the bank where the deposit is being kept, the amount of the deposit, the type of account that is being used, and the current interest rate for that particular account. Okay. But for tenants living in owner occupied properties, so tenants who live in owner occupied properties with 1 or 2 residential units, including your own unit, can apply the security deposit towards rent by first sending a 30-day notice to the landlord, demanding that the landlord comply with the provisions of the Rent Security Deposit Act. This is called invoking the provisions of the Rent Security Deposit Act. The landlord then has 30 days to comply with the requirements of the act. So again, if you can invoke the Rent Security Deposit Act, you can have that security deposit. So even if you are in it, so again, it doesn't automatically apply. The Rent Security Deposit Act doesn't automatically apply to those of you who live in an owner occupied unit, meaning that it is a rental that you are living in whereby the owner of the property also lives there, right? And there are, 1 or 2 residential units, including your own. You can invoke it though. So if you so choose to, you can apply the security deposit toward rent, right? So you can send the 30-day notice to the landlord demanding that the landlord comply, right? So you send that 30-day notice, and that is what is called invoking the provisions of the Rent Security Deposit Act. So the landlord then from there has 30 days to comply with the requirements of the act. So meaning that if you want that security deposit applied towards rent, you can invoke the provisions of that act, even if you live in an owner-occupied unit. So, and I just want to let you guys know about that. But if the landlord fails to comply with the requirements after you have sent the notice invoking the provisions, then you have the right to apply the security deposit as described above. Okay. All right. Annual notice. So on the anniversary of the lease, the landlord must pay any accrued interest to the tenant or apply that amount to the tenant's rent. Okay. So if for those of you who fall under the provisions of the Rent Security Deposit Act, I just want to make sure I'm saying that right. Sometimes I mess up the word. So it's Rent Security Deposit Act. So I'm going to check again once more. Yep, I got it. Rent Security Deposit Act. So for those of you who do fall within its qualifications or fall within the provisions of that act, remember, you are entitled to that annual notice, right? So not only does your money need to go in an interest-bearing account, right? But you deserve like your payout of that as well. So it's supposed to be an interest-bearing account. You're supposed to receive notice within 30 days that after you have given the security deposit to your landlord. Within 30 days of receipt of that security deposit, the landlord is supposed to inform you that of the address, that the money's in the account, the type of interest that it is going to bear. Okay. And then every year on the anniversary, you are supposed to receive a payout. So they must pay the accrued interest to you or apply that amount to the rent. Now, it might not be a tremendous amount of money, you know what I mean? But you are due that. So make sure that your landlord is acting in accordance with the law. Okay. If the landlord fails to pay the annual interest and or provide the annual notice, the tenant can send the landlord written notice about the error and allow 30 days from the mailing date or hand delivery of the landlord to comply, or for the landlord to comply, excuse me. So if there is no compliance, then the tenant can send a letter notifying the landlord that they are applying the security and interest to the rent. Okay. If the annual notice is also supposed to notify the tenant about a change of account or institution, then the tenant does not have to first give the landlord 30 days to correct the error. So other required notices: if your landlord moves the deposit from one bank to another, he or she has 30 days from the date of the move to provide the person who made the deposit with written notice of the change. If the bank that has your security deposit merges with another institution, the landlord then has 30 days of receipt of notice to inform you. Okay. So again, A lot of this is nuanced, very specific language, but the very important basic information is there for you on the slide. And the important thing is that if you are covered under the Rent Security Deposit Act, that security deposit needs to not be commingled with the landlord's funds, own personal money. It has to go in an interest-bearing account. They have to provide you with notice of that as well. They need to provide you with annual notice of it. They need to let you know every year that, hey, you've got this interest. I can apply it to your rent, or I can give you a payout. And if they don't comply within a certain amount of time, you can send them a letter that says that you can just have them apply it to your rent. And they have to notify you of other changes with regard to that particular account as well. And then what if the property is sold or lost after a foreclosure while you're living there? Okay. The new owner is responsible to the tenant for the security deposit. Even if the new owner did not get the deposit from the prior owner, the tenant may be asked to show proof that the deposit was paid, such as a receipt. A new landlord must provide the tenant with the same notices, the name and address of bank that holds the account, the type of account, and rate of interest within 30 days of the transfer of the property. Okay. And then, of course, the important thing to know is, as a tenant, there is no obligation to replenish the deposit. So once a tenant legally tells the landlord to use the security deposit as rent, the landlord can't ask for another deposit as long as the tenant lives in the apartment or house. All right, another important piece of information to know with regard to security deposits. Okay, let's go ahead and round this out. So we went ahead and finished up with security deposits. Now we're moving on to understanding the terms of your lease, and we're going to go ahead and move forward through this information. So a lease is a contract, an agreement between a landlord and a tenant for the rental of an apartment or house. A lease can be an oral, spoken agreement, or it can be in writing. In New Jersey, a tenant with an oral lease has all of the same rights and protections as a tenant with a written lease. Okay. In New Jersey, every written lease must be written in what is called plain language. This means that the lease must be written in a simple, clear, understandable, and easily readable way. Okay. So before signing a written lease, read it carefully, okay? Most leases in New Jersey, whether oral or written, are not the result of bargaining between the landlord and the tenant. The landlord knows that there is more demand for rental housing than there are units to rent, so the landlord can set the lease terms. The person who wants to rent the apartment must then accept the lease as offered by the landlord. Okay. Sometimes landlords will try to include unreasonable, unfair, or even unlawful terms in the lease. For example, a landlord who does not know the law in New Jersey might put in a lease that the landlord can use the security deposit to make repairs while the tenant is still living there. In New Jersey, it is not lawful for the landlord to do this, or a lease may require a tenant to get the landlord's permission to have overnight guests or visitors. This rule is unreasonable. A tenant has the right to have friends or relatives visit for a few days without getting permission from the landlord. Okay, so let's go ahead and move into common lease terms. Okay, so let's talk about the term of the lease. A lease will contain a term, a length of time that you agree to rent the property. It is usually a month, 6 months, or a year. If your lease has no set length of time, the term is automatically a month if the rent is paid on a monthly basis. This means that your agreement runs from month to month. Just because you have a month-to-month lease, excuse me, I have a lisp now. Just because you have a month-to-month lease does not mean that the landlord can get you out at the end of any month. You don't have to leave just because the term of your lease is up. The law contains special rules for evicting tenants. And again, we talked about that. We have talked about that in our eviction specific video, and that will be available again for you as well. And we'll make sure that the dates and times are made available for everybody to see on our social media and so forth. But once your lease term ends, right, you cannot be evicted simply because your lease term ends. Okay. Once, your lease ends in the state of New York, you just move to a month to month, right? You cannot be evicted. If the landlord doesn't want to engage in a new lease, that's fine. But just simply not wanting to start a new lease with you, that doesn't mean that they can evict you on those grounds. And you as a tenant, if you don't want to engage in a new lease and if you want to leave, that's your right. You put the landlord on notice for that. But again, you cannot be evicted simply because your lease ends. You just transfer to what's called a month-to-month lease. Okay, and we can talk further. We'll discuss further. Like if, again, your landlord wants to create a new lease, what reasonable terms are, okay? So let's talk about the rent payment. The lease will state the amount of rent you agree to pay monthly for the house or apartment. This means that if you sign a 1-year lease for $800 a month, you are entering into a contract for $800 a month for 12 months at $9,600. You should always pay your rent by personal check or money order. This way you have a receipt for each payment. Okay. And we covered the security deposit. So the lease may require a security deposit. If a security deposit is required, the written lease should state that it was received and indicate the amount. Late charges. Many leases require a late charge if the rent is not paid by a certain date of the month. This charge is supposed to cover the money lost by the landlord as the result of the late payment. Courts will enforce late charges if they are reasonable and spelled out in writing in the lease. The landlord cannot evict based upon non-payment of late charges unless there is an agreement stating that late charges are to be considered part of the rent. So in order for you to actually be evicted for not paying late fees, if you pay your rent late, if you end up being evicted for, let's say, non-payment of rent, and there's late fees attached to it, you do not have to pay those late fees if they are actually not written in the lease recoverable as rent. And I've mentioned before, for those Section 8 voucher recipients, you never have to pay you can't be evicted for late fees if you are a subsidy recipient. So if you find yourself in court, you will have to owe that base rent if you owe that. But you can be evicted for not paying your base rent, whatever the amount your subsidy doesn't cover. But the late fees and attorney's fees, you do not have to pay. You can be, sued for that in another court, in small claims court or in district court, and they could potentially garnish your wages, things like that, but you can't be evicted for it if you are a subsidized tenant. And again, if it's not in your lease, if you are a private renter, if it's not in your lease as recoverable rent, you do not have to pay late fees. And that's applicable to attorney's fees as well, if it's not written in your lease as recoverable as rent. So we've covered Section 8 housing. Let's go ahead and move forward. Late charges are not allowed if the tenant did not pay the rent on time because the landlord failed to make needed repairs. And we'll cover more habitability claims in depth going forward, okay? The law states that a landlord must allow a tenant a period of 5 business grace days to pay the rent. And I just want to make sure that the class knows this, or our audience or viewers know this as well, that you do not have, you have 5 business grace days with the rent. So just understand that as well. If the first comes and you didn't pay your rent on the first of the month, and your landlord sues you, that is erroneous. That should not be happening because you are, by state law, allowed to. The law states that you are allowed to pay within a 5 business day grace period to pay the rent, okay? If a tenant pays the rent in the 5-day period, the landlord may not charge a late fee. In counting the 5 business days, do not include Saturday, Sunday, or a national or state holiday. Okay. If the landlord knows or should knows that your monthly income regularly does not arrive by a certain day, he should pick a later date that is fair to both of you. Okay. Attorney's fees. Some leases require a tenant to pay the landlord's attorney's fee if the landlord has to use a lawyer to take the tenant to court. If your lease has such a term and the landlord takes you to court for eviction and wins the case, you will be responsible for paying a reasonable fee for landlord's attorneys. Sometimes a landlord will demand attorney's fees in an eviction action and seek to evict if the tenant cannot pay them. However, in order to do this, there must be a written lease, and the lease must state that attorney's fees are additional rent or collectible as rent. If there is no written lease that describes attorney's fees as rent, you cannot be evicted for failing to pay attorney's fees. So that's, again, what I was talking about before with the late fees. So too is applicable with attorney's fees. There has to be a written lease, and the attorney's fees has to be recoverable in that lease, written in plain language, recoverable as additional rent, okay? And the fees themselves have to be reasonable, which will be could be deemed by a judge, okay? And there's case law attached to that. And again, we're not a law school class, and we're not going to get into facts and, the law that, the rules that are extrapolated. Well, we are discussing the rules themselves, but we're not going to get into the particulars of, the case law. So we won't talk about that, but I did, again, want to mention to you that it's very important to know those elements about late fees and attorney's fees as it pertains to your landlord charging you with that information or charging you with that responsibility payment-wise, okay? So let's go ahead and move into, rules and regulations. So a lease will often have rules that the landlord wants the tenant to follow. So care of the property. A lease will usually state that you are responsible for any damage done to the property by your children, guests, or pets if it is more than normal wear and tear. The law requires tenants to be responsible for the proper care of the landlord's property, even if your written lease contains nothing about this, or if you have an oral lease. Under the Anti-Eviction Act, you can be evicted for destroying the landlord's property. Notice of repairs. Okay. Most leases state that the tenant is responsible for giving the landlord prompt notice of any repairs that need to be made to the property. Tenants have a legal responsibility to notify the landlord of needed repairs, even if there is no written lease. Okay. Disorderly conduct. Under any lease, whether written or spoken, you cannot interfere with the rights of other tenants. This means that you and your family members, guests, and pets cannot act in ways that disturb the peace and quiet of other tenants and neighbors. Under the Anti-Eviction Act, you can be evicted for being disorderly, making too much noise, and disturbing other tenants. And then finally, we have pets. A written lease usually will state whether the tenant is allowed to have a pet. If your landlord says that it's okay to have a pet, make sure that you get his or her permission in writing. Many landlords do not permit pets, and the lease will have a no pets clause in it. And just as a side thing with regard to controlling pets, if you are allowed to have a pet, you must maintain control over it. If you allow your pet to damage the property or interfere with the rights of other tenants, your landlord can demand that you control your pet or remove the animal from the building. Your failure to control your pet also could lead to your eviction under the Anti-Eviction Act, okay? So as we round out the course and we just continue with the rules and regulations topics, we have just a few more things we're going to, just briefly discuss, and then we'll wrap up for the evening. So entering the tenant's dwelling unit. So all leases, whether written or oral, give the tenant exclusive possession of the dwelling unit. This means that only the tenant or members of the tenant's household or people the tenant allows in the house or apartment have the right to be there. The landlord does not have the right to come into the house or apartment whenever he or she wants. In a written lease, the landlord's duty to not enter the tenant's house or apartment is called the covenant of quiet enjoyment. This covenant or promise means that the tenant has control over who can or cannot come into his or her apartment or house. So when can a landlord enter? So the law allows the landlord or the landlord's workers to go into the tenant's dwelling only in a few special instances, okay? If the tenant invites or asks the landlord or one of the landlord's workers to come in, if the landlord needs to inspect the apartment, but only at reasonable periods of time. Every day is unreasonable. Every few months, that might be okay. At a reasonable time of day, so 4 a.m. is unreasonable. 4 p.m. might be okay, depending on whether the tenant will be home at that time. And after giving the tenant reasonable notice that he or she is coming to inspect. Reasonable notice usually means a written notice. Okay. It also usually means that the notice must be given at least one full day before the landlord wants to come in. For buildings containing 3 apartments or more, there is a regulation requiring 1 day's notice before a landlord can come into an apartment to make an inspection or do repairs. If the landlord or one of the landlord's workers needs to go into the apartment to do maintenance or make repairs, okay, if the repair is not an emergency, if they can only enter the house or apartment at a reasonable time after giving reasonable notice. If the landlord or the landlord's workers need to go into the house or apartment to do emergency repairs, under this circumstance, the landlord may not have to give 1 day's notice or even any notice. So if the emergency is really serious or dangerous, for example, the apartment is on fire or water is rushing out of a broken pipe and pouring through the floor, but even in the case of an emergency, the landlord should try to give some notice if he or she can, even if the notice is just a phone call. So notice is always really important, all right? And that is your covenant of quiet enjoyment. It doesn't have to be written in the lease, and it is applicable to oral leases. It is applicable to written leases. It is a covenant. It is implied. It is an implied covenant. So it does not have to be expressly written or said in the lease or the lease agreement. That comes with all leases, okay? And your landlord cannot just show up whenever he or she likes, right? You have the right to enjoy that space freely without, the intrusion of the landlord. You have the right to possess that property and who comes in and who, cannot come into that property. So they technically they own the building, but you have the right to possess it. That is your right. So make sure you exercise that, and that if they're coming in to make repairs, make sure that they give you at least 1 day's notice. They're coming at a reasonable time and is not a regular occurrence. And that if an emergency repairs need to be made, the emergency itself needs to be assessed. If is it a serious or dangerous condition? And even if that is the case, if it's possible to make even a phone call, that would certainly be appreciated. They cannot just show up whenever they feel like it and not provide you with notice. So just wanted to go ahead and make those points there. So what if the landlord won't stay out? So if the landlord or one of the landlord's workers enters your house or apartment and does not have your permission or does not have one of the other reasons discussed already, he or she is breaking the law. You should send a letter by certified mail to the landlord complaining about what happened. Keep a copy for your records. You can also call the police or go to the police station or local court and file a complaint for trespass or harassment against the person who entered without your permission. You may be able to file a trespass or harassment complaint because even though your landlord owns the building, he or she, again, has given you the right to possess the premises. Okay. A lease requires the landlord to make sure that each tenant respects the rights of other tenants. So now we're talking about other lease provisions. So as we wrap up here and we are at the final material for our presentation this evening. And again, I really thank you for those of you who have hung in there and heard all of the valuable information that we have this evening. I'm so happy to have been able to present it to you. And I greatly appreciate your attention and your enthusiasm for the subject matter. So as we round this out, we're going to go ahead and finish up with some final lease provisions that we deem important for your knowledge. And again, we are using some really helpful resources to compile the substantive information, offered in this particular course. And it comes largely from the Legal Services of New Jersey manual, landlord-tenant manual. So go ahead and search for that, print it out, have it available as your PDF. And refer to it if you are a first-time renter, you are a seasoned renter. If you're a landlord, it's always really great to have and make yourself aware of the available and applicable laws because it is tremendously helpful to know and understand your lease terms and understand the basics of your lease and things like that. It is so important on both sides of it. So again, we have peaceable transactions and have a better renting experience overall. So maintaining order. A lease requires the landlord to make sure that each tenant respects the rights of other tenants. If one tenant is disturbing the other tenants by playing loud music at night or destroying the property, it is the landlord's responsibility to make the tenant stop. But in order for the landlord to be held responsible for any damages suffered by the tenants, one of the tenants must tell the landlord about the situation. Okay, so let's go ahead into renewal of the lease. Many written leases will have a section explaining how you can get a new lease when your current lease ends. The lease may, for instance, state that unless the lease is ended by either the landlord or the tenant, it will automatically be renewed for another year. But a yearly lease is not renewed automatically, becomes what is called a month-to-month lease when the year in the lease ends. A month-to-month lease will renew itself automatically for another month unless the tenant or the landlord acts to end the lease. This rule applies even if the lease agreement is oral and not in writing. Finally, changes in the lease. Okay. Oh, but just back to renewal of the lease as well. You cannot be evicted simply because your landlord does not want to enter into a new lease with you. As I stated before, it's very important to know that if your lease term ends and then there's no like carryover or there's no discussion to have a new lease, you just simply move on to month. And we're going to get into changes in the lease right now. It's going to be the last topic that we talk about this evening, what are called reasonable changes in the lease, things like that. But again, just simply the fact that your lease term ends is not grounds for eviction. And we've talked about in our eviction only video about the grounds for eviction, and this is not among them. So if a landlord says that they're going to evict you because they don't want to enter into a new lease term for you, unless there are other reasons for evictions that fall under the Anti-Eviction Act, like disorderly, behavior that disturbs other tenants, destruction of the landlord's property, habitual late payment, non-payment of rent, health code violations, things like that. If it doesn't fall under one of those, just simply, because your lease term ends, that is not grounds for eviction. You simply go over to what's called a month-to-month, and we're going to talk about changes in the lease now. So when your lease ends, the landlord can offer a new lease with changes in the terms and conditions of the lease. So to do this, the landlord must give you a written notice ending your existing lease and offering to enter into a new lease with you if you accept the changes. The landlord's notice must clearly spell out the changes. A tenant's refusal at the end of a lease to accept reasonable changes in the terms and conditions of the lease can result in an eviction under the Anti-Eviction Act. So I'm going to read that for you one more time. A tenant's refusal at the end of a lease to accept reasonable changes in the terms and conditions of the lease can result in an eviction. So if the landlord wants to make changes in the lease and they give you the proper notice and you refuse to accept those reasonable changes, that can be grounds for eviction. Okay. So that's different than just the landlord not wanting to enter into a new lease with you and you continuing as month to month. But if they propose a new lease and the terms are reasonable and you fail to or refuse to adhere to those new terms, yes, that can be grounds for eviction. So I wanted to make that important distinction for you now. And my mic's still going. Okay, excellent. So as we wrap up, and again, thank you for your patience. So going back to what is reasonable, because that is a term you'll see all the time in the law, what is deemed reasonable. So to be reasonable, the changes must take into account the circumstances and interests of both the landlord and the tenant. This means that your landlord cannot make lease changes that he or she knows will cause you unnecessary hardship unless he or she has very strong reasons for doing so. If your landlord sends you a written notice containing lease changes that you think are unreasonable, send a letter to the landlord describing the unreasonable lease changes. Your letter should also say that you will not accept the new lease unless the landlord offers to make changes that are reasonable. For example, at the end of your lease, your landlord wants to change the lease by putting in late charges if your rent is paid after the 5th day of the month. The landlord knows that you do not get paid or receive your assistance check until the 3rd or 4th day of the month, and that it will be very hard for you to get the rent money to him by the 5th. You refuse to sign the new lease, and the landlord takes you to court to try to evict you. In court, the judge should decide that the lease change is not reasonable because the landlord knows you cannot pay the rent by the 5th of the month and should have picked a later date. So that is your remedy there. An excellent example proposed by the Legal Services of New Jersey Landlord-Tenant Manual. But again, what they're saying is that any terms that are made, that are changed and proposed by the landlord must be reasonable. And if you feel that they're not, you can send a letter that says that you want it changed to a reasonable term. And again, if it ends up going to court, your landlord attempts to evict you, it can be up to the judge to decide whether that new term is reasonable. So that rounds out our class. So we have a lovely quote here by Philip Moffat. A house is a home when it shelters the body and comforts the soul, which I think is really lovely and is part of the purpose why we talk about these subjects. Again, today we reviewed renting your new home and understanding your lease. So, and again, we do it because it is your home. It is your right to possess the premises. It's your place, it's your space, and it is yours to use, and you should get to enjoy it. But we want to make sure that in doing so that you exercise your rights. As we say with all of our classes, it is so absolutely important to make sure that you have this information. So as a recap, we reviewed all of the wonderful available sources, resources that can help you find affordable housing to start your search. For those particular groups, we talked about what discrimination looks like during your housing search if you are a subsidy recipient, if you are someone who is handicapped or disabled. If you're a senior citizen, we had some additional types of housing that you can look for with the resources that we provide. And then we talked about when you do find that home that you're looking for, to do an inspection and the remedies if you find a particular problem. And then, of course, we talked about security deposits, and we talked about some basic lease terms for you to understand when you do move into that home. So I think a really nice comprehensive review of what it's like, from searching for a home to moving in, understanding your new lease. So greatly appreciate your time here this evening. I hope this information finds you well. I hope that it was particularly helpful. And I hope that you continue to come visit us here at STEPP so that we can provide you with the information that you need. Landlords, tenants, area service providers, legal practitioners, anybody who wants to be part of resolving the problem here and having a more peaceable landlord-tenant transactions in our community, a more knowledgeable community, so that we just have a better friends and neighbors and better experiences all around. So thank you for joining me. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Take care.